Welcome to everyone from my side as well. I'm Silvia Schmidt. I'm a Policy Associate Manager at IFOAM Organics Europe. And today we'll be speaking about a political topic that is really quite important for the organic movement. And I want to give you first a bit of context before introducing our excellent panel of speakers who will also give you some insights of their own. In terms of context, I would just like to frame it in terms of what the Commission is currently doing and in terms of what the Farm to Fork strategy foresees. So there are two important initiatives in this context. The first one is the very famous, as you probably have heard about it, law on sustainable food systems that will come out at the end of 2023. And within this law, there will be a whole section on sustainability labeling, among other things, which I will not go into detail now. And that, is a welcome thing for the organic sector. But at the same time, the Commission is also thinking of issuing a legislation on substantiating green claims. So it would be a legislation that would say, okay, this claim is substantiated, this one is not. And this one is supposedly coming out in October, we think. It has been postponed a couple of times. And this regulation is based on a method that is called the product environmental footprint that the Commission has been working on for 10, if not 12 years at this stage. And as Sabine mostly will be saying during her intervention, this PEF does create some concerns for products that are produced in an extensive way, such as organic. Because what we see, or what we tend to see in the scores, is that basically the PEF supports more intensive rather than extensive products. And I will let Sabine develop on that afterwards so that we can hear from our excellent speakers. So I would like to first give the floor to Mr. Claude Gruffat. He was the CEO of Biologique, so he's really a pioneer of organic in France. And now, since 2020, he is member of the European Parliament for the Green Party. Bienvenue, Monsieur Gruffat. I will switch to French. Donc, un grand merci d'être parmi nous.
So, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you with us today. So, there you are. You are responsible, amongst other things, for the question of the environment at the European Parliament. And we'd like to hear your views on this initiative. What's your view on this initiative? What's your opinion as to consumer expectations? So there you are, over to you. Thank you very much for having invited me here and give me the opportunity to talk about this topic, which has, for me, been of great interest for a long time now. My previous activity, obviously, for me as director of this company, the consumer concerns were obviously a major issue for me. So this is an additional stage in my work. Now, the strategy for 2020 fitted into the Green Pact, aiming the Green Deal to make our system more equitable, and while also respecting the environment and the climate, with a capacity to eat on a planet that will be able to sustain this activity. This is the first time that the European Union has, under its roadmap, has proposed a global approach. The action plan for this strategy plans to create a food environment encouraging the consumption of sustainable foods, moving on to healthy and sustainable food. So this is new because the agricultural policy hitherto had been very far from this concept. As you know, the strategy from the farm to the table has a precise objective with 25% of organic, less pesticides, less antibiotics in animal food and so on. So these are in meats and so on. So this is a major policy. So for this strategy to be successful, we need to adopt a certain number of actions in order to succeed in this transition. So it's now already, we're already preparing legislation, which is very important for the end of 2022. and in policy, this is the time scale we're thinking of. It's not the time of the entrepreneur and so on, so it's very far from that. So this strategy will set a framework for the sustainable food system to lead to the changes expected to improve overall sustainability in the European Union, integrating all the policies relating to food. And so this requires this leads on to a consultation at the end of April, which will help for the drawing up of a common definition for requirements and general principles for a sustainable food system. So that's the framework in which we started to work. So this is within this legislation framework that we're going to set the rules for sustainability in food terms. So the implementation and how I see this, how do I see this? I think, first of all, this is a major lever for the food system, and I think it's so fundamental that I have a feeling that stage 2, after the European regulations, this goes back 21 years. Before there was no regulations, there were private specifications and so on. But so for me, labeling is really important. What I see in it is that there's the product now is going to be an element to re-accelerate, to move on to this second stage to enable stronger development of organic farming in Europe and consumption of organic foods. So we need the broadest and most reliable approach for this food transition planned for in the strategy of the from the farm to the fork or the plate. And so this is adopted by a great majority. We had 85% of votes in favour of this strategy, so that's quite significant. And it should also lead the consumer. It mustn't mislead the consumer or create confusion, as some tend to do in France in particular. And it's my country, so I can talk about that, between organic and intermediate labels, which are not necessarily organic. So this is harmful to organic farming in general. Transparency is the basis for confidence, the consumer's confidence in what they eat, to make informed decisions and choices. So, well, yeah, what sort of agricultural model does this involve? Industrial, peasant, organic, or what? What sort of food model? Industrial, artisanal, or a lot of considerable transformation and so on? These are questions that are of interest to all people who eat. What economic model? Would it be a stock exchange model, or would it be cooperative and with solidarity? Would it be SMEs or multinationals? Will it involve relocalization, sustainable development within businesses and so on? What commercial model are we going to adopt too? Short circuits, long circuits, equitable circuits and so on. And we can see that the information needed by the consumer goes well beyond the simple nutritional advice provided on labels. So transparency on the origins and traceability. We need to specify the manufacturer, the ingredients, and you need to have and you need a code so you can read the labels, and the presence of pesticide residues. These are all so many elements. The presence of residues of pesticides, this is something which must appear on the labels. These are all so many items of information which can inspire confidence in the consumer. So this lever allows us to better answer to consumers who are more and more attentive and interested in healthy eating, who are much more attached to their eating. This will enable us to help the behavior in terms of food to improve. Obesity is increasing now in Europe, and half of the population is overweight, and this leads to diseases related to foodstuffs. And we've got 16% of people under 15 years of age who are affected by obesity. This is completely new, and it's serious to see that our children are in such a poor state of health. So this, the regulations, the environmental, the food environment is quite frightening. So the change, we also need to look at ways of ensuring less waste, and also respond to people's budgets as well. We also need to play a role in the reorientation of development of agriculture with virtuous modes of production. This is an element which is key for the orientations in terms of policy for production. These purchasing policies must lead to greater sustainability and more organic farming, which is not without consequences on the creation of value chains and a better sharing of revenues between farmers in the countryside. We're also going to be working on regulations for equitable trade to better answer to the needs for the ecological transformation and a better remuneration for the producers. A lot of producers earn less than 1,300 euros a month, which is obviously not enough, which is an essential question to ensure the future of food production for food, especially for food sovereignty. And I consider that the specifications for equitable trade are a part of the answer to this issue. Labelling on sustainability brings together a number of aspects relating to the economy, the climate, nutrition, animal well-being, leading to a harmonization of labelling on sustainability over time. So currently, European labelling on foodstuffs mainly concerns a number of different legislations concerning information provided to the consumers, the products that are of quality nature, and also the origin, the nutritional values, and the addition of allergenic products. And so we need to go well beyond this. So to conclude, I'd insist on the fact that as a tool for orientation of demand and supply and demand, sustainability has decisive consequences on the policy for the food system. And as you know, the reform of the CAP is the scene where different policies are going to be in conflict with the future of food production in Europe. So you can count on me to ensure that clear display of this sort of information to provide good nutritional information to the customer will be right at the heart of what I shall be doing in the future. Thank you for your attention. Thank you very much for having provided the political context for this topic and having reminded us of how important it is to ensure transparency for the consumers. And obviously, remuneration for the producers is clearly a major issue.
Go a bit more into the nitty-gritty of really what does this mean in practice and on the labels. And we have here with us Sabine Bonnot. She is an organic arboriculturalist from southwest of France. And she is currently the president of the ITAB, the Institute of Organic Food and Farming in France. And the ITAB has really been on the forefront of the development of a label called PLANÈTE, which sort of gives an alternative to perhaps what the Commission is thinking of in terms of what could be the methodology behind the sustainability label. So Sabine, basically, what are, in your view, the shortcomings of the product environmental footprint, and what has ITAB done to address those? What is this famous PLANÈTE score?
Okay, thanks. Nice to see you all. I'm going to switch to French, if that's fine. Merci beaucoup, Silvia.
Thank you very much, Silvia. Just a very short introduction on ITAB, which is part of a much broader collective, which is behind what we shall be talking about. ITAB is a technical institute that has been here for 15 years. It's an association. It's recognized as being of public interest, and it's approved by the Ministry of Agriculture in France, and it's there to ensure the ecological transition in terms of food. Obviously, we work a lot on organic farming, but also on all the intermediate stages and the pathways that and to ensure agriculture which is very low on entrance. Do I have the hand for the to move the slides on? Can we move the slide on? Next slide. Donc c'est un peu chargé. What Sylvie mentioned, and Claude too, is especially important. especially in terms of all the ecological pathways. In France, it's when we look at the nutritional side with Nutri-Score, the French state has taken the lead in Europe on what's called environmental display or information. There are 2 laws in France which started to regulate this provision, which is going to be compulsory in France. This will, for the time being, it will be voluntary, but this will fit in with the broader context that Silvia mentioned of sustainability labelling. So we have the environment, nutrition, the social side to things, and the form of breeding. So this labelling is especially of concern if it's done badly, because the European Commission is seriously considering, and France too, using as a base for this environmental labelling what Silvia calls the PEF, the product environmental footprint. And this PEF, next slide, the following, as compared with the previous slide. In other words, globally, we don't talk about the production systems and their real impact on the environment, but just discriminate between plant production and animal production. So what you see here is that cattle, sheep and so on, regardless of the method of breeding, will be badly marked. The worst will be sheep, so the joint what comes out well is tomatoes, potatoes, strawberries, regardless of the production method. So whether the tomatoes are under greenhouses and so on, they're still A++. So this really poses difficulties. And the French state is kind of a leader on this subject. They want a cross-cutting approach based on this tool. So when we zoom into these categories, I don't know if you can see this correctly. I don't know if you can reduce the size of the slide there to see it better, or do it 1 slide per page. Thank you. So when you look at inside the categories, the second bad surprise is that this method for calculation of environmental impact, and I'd really put that in inverted commas, the production intermediate or biological or organic production rather, either or whether it be open air or red label or organic and so on, is marked rated lower than intensive industrial production, and really yield is seen to be a value in environmental terms, which is obviously an issue. Next slide. Some initiatives, there aren't that many in Europe, there aren't 36 of them, but the PLANETE score that I'm going to detail here, the ECO score, and I suggest you're very careful on the upscaling of these tools. And then there's a third one called Foundation Earth, which is not very advanced at the moment. We don't have that many other examples. ECO score and PLANETE score. Let's take an example of eggs. You can see that you've got open air eggs in the middle, or red label, and organic eggs. And you see that the scores are good when you're close to the PEF and at B, and when you get a more precise determination of the environmental questions. So this can be put onto the market fairly rapidly. There's going to be an obligation to substantiate green claims based on the PEF. So this is both a risk and an opportunity if we do things correctly, if we go beyond PEF. Next slide. And other sectors are concerned. I don't know if we have representatives of the textile sector or cosmetics, or but there's a whole number of players on a European scale who are now up in arms against the fact that globally the PEF really misses out on the hotspots in each of these sectors. And the same goes for fishing. For textile, we can do a separate zoom after this sequence. On fishing, for example, 95% of the PEF for fish caught is the fuel for the sailing vessels. So this is seen to be the major environmental question in that sector. Let's stop criticising now, and I'll move on to some of the solutions. So next slide. On the question of hotspots, you can see that we're completely missing out with this tool, and it's about time we got up to system level to find solutions which will mobilize this tool, because the Commission is very much attached and spent a lot of time to it, and spent a lot of time developing it, and but it needs to be updated for it to be used for the evaluation part. But there are some solutions already on the table. Next slide, please. This means we can, this is what Bonnot mentioned earlier, where we can really look at environmental issues, but we have planetary and environmental limits which are have been completely overstepped in terms of biodiversity. You can see that on the left here. The use of water and its pollution, the question of synthetic entrants that we don't talk about enough, and we need to have a tool that's really there to serve circularity of food production and agriculture. We need to obviously to stop taking fossil fuels out of the earth to provide fertilizers and so on. Pesticides too is another issue, and with chemical, plastic, antibiotic and other forms of pollution. Next slide, please. So clearly business as usual is not really an option. And this is an initiative we've been supporting now for a year, which is now being deployed, and it's been deployed for 6 months in France, and it will go out in other European countries as well, with the PLANETE score, which is going to mobilize and continue to mobilize competences from scientists and what we call the citizens' compass, which means a whole number of structures, organizations that are consulted on a regular basis with requirements and expertise. And we reckon that we've missed out for a number of decades now on this, and the civil society was really the pioneer in identifying these issues. Next slide, please. So here's the PLANETE score. A mark which is aggregated at the top with these criteria: pesticides, reducing the amount of pesticides in fields, biodiversity, climate. The three key issues underlying the mark, and this marking will be put on all products with more than 5% of products from animal breeding. So you can see for pigs and poultry, you can see that we're on red here, and this goes for milk chocolate too. So it's not very good to buy products which have this red rating, especially for children. So really, mayonnaise too, with the red rating. So these are ways of discerning things, evaluating things, which reflect the form of breeding, but also the concentrated effect on the environment. That too is a topic where the PEF really doesn't get to grips with the situation. Next slide. So just to give you a quick focus, we've got more than 130 businesses, companies that have committed to the PLANETE score rating. And so this is the biggest initiative at a European level. So for the time being, we've been, for a few weeks or months, according to the operators, we've been moving out into other European countries. We're going to see distributors with whom we have the pleasure of working currently. Next slide, please. And manufacturers, producers. And for us, we're delighted to have the big industrialists, international industrialists on board, alongside small producers, cooperatives, and the different sectors and all of their diversity. Next slide, please. And we share with these businesses precise data which will enable us to apply the PLANETE score algorithm on production systems. And now we have webinars practically every week which bring in 200 to 600 participants, and where businesses testify to how they're working on their references and their products, thanks to identifying the issues through PLANETE score. I won't go into the detail here. Next slide, please. So these are slides which were produced by the players in the agri-food industry with complete transparency with respect to the consumer. There's no greenwashing. They're very demanding, and the distinctions are very clear, very fine. So they're looking at how they can improve for example, in their range of chocolates, looking at how sugarcane from Brazil is used and cocoa from the Ivory Coast and so on, from Côte d'Ivoire, how this may contribute to deforestation. And so then after that we get through to cocoa, chocolate, which is organic and certified, which doesn't lead to deforestation. So I'll leave you the opportunity to look at this after the Congress. You can see that each of these players testifies to the way in which you can drive innovation, especially in France. And a red label is not enough. The red label is simply a set of specifications on the origins, and it doesn't take into account such issues as deforestation. So really moving on to Red Label Plus. In relation to the profusion of labels and logos and so on, all that exists on the market now, it's really a way of having a transverse, a cross-cutting base reevaluation to achieve real transparency, so that those who are willing to accept transparency can really promote their products. Next slide, please. So the milk, the dairy sector, here we've got a label which has been strongly developed, C'est qui le patron, it's seen strong development, and they look at other issues than just standard milk. The questions of cows being fed on soya and so on from Brazil and so on. So without going to the detail, here's an example of jam, and you can see that we've got fairly sensitive gauges here which move, and you can see that some apricots have involved the use of pesticides that have come in from Brazil and so on. Next slide.
No next slide. I think there is a next slide. Okay. Well, so that means that's the last one. Okay. There is a question. Okay. This one is important, and that's the last one. En fait, c'est aussi un outil, et c'est très important.
This is a tool, so it's very important. It's not just to say that a product is good or bad, but to say that the product is there, available now, but it can be improved. So we can't just be satisfied with saying that chickens are bad and tomatoes are good. We really need to show how this product can be improved. Here's an example of a company called, I didn't catch the name, working on the quality of their marks on its site. This is a digital player now. They've got more than 200 references where all the marks are shown, and they also publish articles on how they achieve procurement, to see how they can improve things, either for butter, sugar, chocolate, wheat, or whatever, how through these different pathways there are ways of improving things and working in the right direction. And there are a few other slides on the question of how the customers finally see it, the consumers finally see things. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Sabine, for this overview about both the shortcomings of PEF as well as what the PLANèTE score is. And you can imagine that, if we went in a shop and then you would have an organic product and or an extensive product, whichever it is, and a conventional product, and the conventional product scores better or the same as the organic product, well, that could be quite concerning. So this is why we're bringing this topic to you today, to really raise the awareness on this topic. And having said that, of course, sustainability labeling as an idea is clearly something that should be welcomed. Transparency for consumers and so on is clearly a positive thing. Okay, but we have seen now that PLANèTE score is mostly in France at the moment, with some exceptions, of course, but in France it's going absolutely great. So we wanted to bring in also, let's say, speakers outside of France to see a bit how the situation is outside of France. So Jürn, you have worked at the Tunin Institute for quite a while. You have recently rejoined FiBL as the head of the Department of Socioeconomics. So I wanted to hear from you a bit, what is FiBL's views on sustainability labeling? How is it developing in countries in which FiBL is active? If you could give us a bit of an overview on that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for this kind introduction. Does it work? Okay. May I start with a general observation, because in theory, a sustainable label is a good thing, because it provides the consumers in the position to take the product quality and the way how the product is produced into consideration. So this is actually quite positive. Interestingly, such kind of orientation information exists already, and this is the organic logo. And that's actually quite interesting, because now all the retailers who are thinking to introduce a new label. And previously they have invested and they have built up a close relationship to organic farmers and to organic processors. They now have to find an answer. What shall they do with the organic logo, and in particular when they have then, for example, the eco score, where the organic product is score worse than the organic one. So from that point of view, it doesn't make sense. And the same is also for policymakers and governments who also fostered organic farming, for example. They also now have to explain, I mean, saying organic farming is a solution, organic farming is a contribution to climate change and to stop the loss of biodiversity. They have to find then a clever answer why they should support then a kind of food labeling system, where this to a certain extent contradicts this kind of information. And therefore, at least from my experiences and from my observation, we have a quite complex situation right now. As far as the retailers are concerned, some retailers in Switzerland, for example, they start with a kind of sustainable labeling beyond organic farming or next to organic farming, but it's still unclear whether they are really pushing it or they are just using it, they are just trying it. Others are still thinking and waiting, and I think many retailers, in particular also in Germany, they are just waiting, they're waiting what happens at the European level. So it's a bit unclear situation in which direction it goes. And as far as the government is concerned, for example, the German government, they are not really active compared to the French ones to push this, and to my knowledge also not at the European level. What they have done recently is that they said, okay, we would like to introduce an animal welfare label, which is mandatory, focusing on the specific topic on animal welfare, but in the new scheme, organic farming would get the highest scores, which then would be in line what the government said all the last years. So from that point of view, I think many actors are just waiting, are observing, and I also assume as soon as the European Commission is doing the next steps, then I think there will be a new dynamic. And I see certainly the danger for organic farming, and this is also, I mean, we just have in the last session talked about the 25% target of organic farming, and so this also underlines the need for really a coherent policy approach.
Thank you very much, Jürn. Indeed, a coherent policy approach is an excellent way to end a speech. It's indeed something we absolutely need. Saying that we want to reach a 25% organic target and then having potentially a sustainability label based on a methodology that doesn't really help achieving this target is not entirely coherent. So thank you for that. We will, and an applause for Jürn, we didn't have one. Thank you. We will now go to our last speaker, but definitely not least. So we spoke previously about the PLANETE score, about companies implementing the PLANETE score. Well, Judith Falamok represents and heads one of these companies. In 2000, She founded the German-French group Moog Organic that has 2 production sites, one in Germany and one in France, with 160 employees, over 70 organic oils, and customers in over 30 countries. And she even brought some of her products today to show how the Planet Score looks on them. So Judith, how is your experience with the Planet Score? How easy or not was it to score, to implement, to put on your products? How are consumers seeing it? Yes, thank you. So the floor is yours, Judith. You want to come here? Yeah, perfect.
Yes, thank you. Yes, my name, I thought that I have to speak English. My French is more better than I switch to French later. Bonjour, yes, thank you for inviting me. I'm Julius Falamok. We are an organic oil mill, so I created the group in 2010 because we put 2 companies together, but we started 40 years ago. I wanted to tell it because we are one of the pioneers of organic, and for me it's important to say it's not just modern for us. We are from organic agriculture, we are farmers, and we live the organic. And now I understand why you asked me to come, because we are organic. We see that the Planet Score is perhaps a little bit difficult to communicate, but we think that it's important to do it as well. Yeah, so we are nearly 40 years old. We've got 70 oils. We are only organic. We started to produce not so far away in Bram, close to Carcassonne, sunflower oil. And then we put more and more oils on the range, and we export to some countries. That works well. So we've got we've already some logos, as you see, the organic European logo, but also Demeter, Fair Trade, Fair for Life, IFS, of course, and BioED in France with Synabio. And now the sustainability logo or label is coming. And why do we choose to use it? You see that we just started to use it. We think that it's good because it speeds up the transition of our food system for more ecological considerations. It will come. That's what I understood. A logo will come, so let's choose the good one. I'm nutrition, and when the Nutri-Score came, I thought it's so bad it will never come because it's just idiot. It's no sense, you know. The Nutri-Score, you've got a better note for Coca-Cola than for apple juice. And I said, it will not come. And then I heard about the EcoScore. And I said, we have to take care about us, the organic people, and our children, and to make sure that the EcoScore will not come. So that's why I'm here today. That's why I brought the Planet Score to Germany the first day that I heard about it. And I speak about it everywhere when I am, even in the evening and the night, because it's important to stop the EcoScore, and even if we can, to stop the PEF. Thank you very much, Sabine, for all your knowledge and all your patience to show that it's a danger for the organic companies and the organic movement if we don't stand up and stop these evolutions, because they are not good for us. So what we have to make sure is that we can put it on the labels. So yeah, I see your eyes. This is what we have to put on labels. If they are small or big, it's already a lot. So it's the organic logo, the nutrition values, the storage information, retention period, origin, lot number, best before, net filling, sale description, distributor. New in France will be the Triman, the recycling logo. And then we have to put the Planet Score logo as well. So we have to make sure that everybody knows it, that you can understand it very quickly, and that it's complete and transparent as well. And the third topic that I would like to say is we have to make a new European solution. It's very important. We don't say in France you go ahead, and in Germany people are saying, yeah, we've got the organic logo, or they say, yeah, but you didn't take care about the social aspects, we should add them. And yeah, that's right. It should be improved if it's possible. But let's get together and speak with one voice so that we will have the best label that we can get. So we try to do it, and we will be one of the companies who will have not only a lot of, because it's not so difficult, you know, with organic oils, we are making only organic, only oils, but we also have some of them which will get a B, because, for example, olive oil will not be A. It's not possible. So this is what I would like to say. We have to improve a little bit the notes, because we can't understand them. We don't know why this logo is at B for biodiversity. So you asked me to come to show you Planet Score in action. So that's what we did, and we created a QR code in the last weeks. We put this brand on the market in the next weeks, and we will ask our customers what they think about. But it's too new, too short time to be able to say something. But we will get feedback, and then we will tell you. So the main message that I would like to send to you is make a union. Don't let us divide, because we have to stay strong around the organic idea. The organic idea is sustainable. So let's work for the Planet's goal. It's the best idea that we have right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Judith, for your enthusiasm and this last message that I can only support. Thank you very much. Okay, so we have a couple of minutes left. We started later, so I saw your hand. You're very quick. We started later, so I'll take a couple more minutes, but no worries. Coffee is coming very soon. One question before I give the floor to you, Sabine and Judith, perhaps to you both. How, if I were a company sitting now in this audience, how do I, go about potentially testing the Planet Score if I'm interested?
Does that work? Ça marche?
Ouais.
Ok. Il suffit de nous contacter. C'est une initiative qui n'est pas là.
It's an initiative. We're not here to make money. It's not a business thing. It's we're hoping to just propel the ecological transition. We're there to help. We're subsidized by, we have sponsors, corporate sponsors and donations. Even companies who sponsor us, they don't get a lot out of it. They've got but we don't. You contact us. We're here to provide the information. We'll share all the data that we have. We have a data sharing agreement with confidentiality restrictions for those who wish it, because obviously we're talking about sensitive information about product recipes, sometimes ingredient lists. So, and we'll evaluate, we'll assess your products, we'll explain the basis of that. For example, why olive oil, for example, is very poorly scored in PF, and why ours is slightly better but not A, why it's still B. We can do simulations too. If you have products which you think could be improved, we could give you simulations of how they could be improved, and they could have really, really interesting exchanges and discussions, because even under organic labels, you can have products which are more or less well loaded. Often if you're using non-certified cane sugar from Brazil, for example, which doesn't have forestry certification, then you might not get a good noting, and that can have an impact on your overall score. So you have to be prepared to challenge yourselves, to look again at your production practices. And was in the development phase in France, but also in 6 other European countries now. And we're delighted to hear that feedback from Judith, because Moog was one of the first companies outside of France to get involved with us, to test the Planet score and the grading scheme. So having that feedback is absolutely invaluable for us. So anybody who is interested, we can, and we're looking to expand the Planet score well beyond the confines of France. And a little message of hope in this institutional and economic context at the moment. The Planet score received just a month ago, in fact, a very important prize in France, the Retail for Good Award, which is awarded by supermarket chains and CSR experts, panel chaired by the community of committed companies. We were the only initiative in the final from the food and agricultural sector, and the judges said that it was the only initiative they had seen which could really ready to be upscaled, which is not at all greenwashing, and which was capable of transforming the market towards more sustainability and durability.
Merci, Sabine.
So you can find all that information, and those nice things I just mentioned from the jury, all available on our website, the Planet Score website, which was on my slide, or planet-score.com, or just get in touch with Faller-Moog Europe, and we'll put you in contact. I'm going to ask one more question, and then I will hand over the microphone to them. We don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to be very precise. Please try to be as concise as possible in your answers. Claude and Jürn, we've heard a lot. Well, Judith mentioned the proliferation of labels as packaging is becoming increasingly smaller. Packages have been quite cluttered now, so you need a magnifying glass to read them sometimes. Do you think extra labels are good for consumers, or it's just becoming too confusing? Please, sorry, but please try to be short. No, I think consumer information is so important, so necessary that right now, especially in the digital age we live with QR codes and all the digital technologies that we have at our disposal, the quantity of information which can be provided to consumers rapidly, I don't think we need to worry about this too much. Don't worry about the size of the label being too small. I think the real question here, the real issue is, do we really want to share that information? Do we want to avoid the risk of greenwashing? Do we really want to inform people? I went a bit further. I went beyond the confines of pure environmentalism when I was talking about earlier. But that's what consumers need. It's what they're expecting, what they're asking of us. They want more information. They want to make informed decisions. So I think that's the real question for me. We shouldn't be talking about the size of the label or the size of the font. I think we need to get away from these things. But I think we've got the resources at our disposal to do things differently and better.
About this idea of the proliferation of labels, is it a good development, or perhaps it becomes a bit too much?
I mean, this is always a danger that there are too many labels on the product. Some weeks ago, I've had a meeting with a large Swiss retailer and with a marketing officer. And the marketing officer said, well, the Planet score looks nice, but could we not reduce the information to these A, B, C, and D, and E, because all the other information are not interested for the consumers? And I think this is the key problem. I mean, agriculture, sustainability. I mean, Jan mentioned that when we have a systemic approach to agriculture, it is complex. Our world is complex, and to a certain extent, it would be a danger to reduce it, to make it too simplified. From that point of view, I still believe that the organic logo, which is a promise that the farmer and the retailer and the processors are just doing what's in the EU regulation and in the organic standards, that this kind of logo it's on the one hand simple, but it's also a clear message to the consumers. And of course, if there are too many products, then of course certainly a number of consumers, not all of them. I think the products of you are quite interesting, and I'm pretty sure that the organic consumers who really buy a lot of organic food and they are really interested in doing the right things, that they are requiring this kind of information. However, a large number of consumers that are going to conventional retailers, for example, probably just go shopping and then they just spend a millisecond in the decision and then they buy the product. And from that point of view, I think it's important not to have too many logos on the product.
Thank you. Okay, so now it's up to you. I already saw 2 hands raised. First, yes, so we have the sir that is right there. Yeah, the microphone is coming. It's being passed around the participants.
Good afternoon, Adrian Steele from the Soil Association. I would just like to know how much time you think you've got before industry pressure demands a standardised European-wide methodology for this, for the metrics, which are in sense with big companies coming under pressure from shareholders to deliver their net zero commitment and carbon cutting and so on. It's a very, very complex series of messages. I understand that Foundation Earth are calling for a conference in September with the other parties you've mentioned and yourselves. Maybe to bash this out, I was wondering if you can give us some kind of indication about how you feel about that and how much time you think you've got to elevate your position compared to those slightly more larger scale industry-dominated initiatives.
Thank you. I will also take the second question from Nick here in front, and then I'm afraid we will not have time anymore for questions. Okay, so microphone is there.
Yeah, sorry to come back again, but one of the reasons why I focused on maintenance payments in the previous presentation was that the large proportion of the environmental benefits of organic farming come from what the farmer does on the land and are land related. And the conversion of that information into product information is very difficult. I don't know where the data exists reliably on yields or on pesticide use or on a whole range of other factors. So I don't see how at the moment we're in a stage that we can reliably convert the information about what farmers do into something that can go on a product label. And I'd be grateful for comments on how that's really being achieved.
Okay, that's quite a big question. And I know Sabine could speak for like 3 hours on that, but no, you only have 1 minute. So please reply to that question. Thank you.
Micro, yes, okay. Oui, on a reçu hier soir
we got a press release yesterday evening from Foundation Earth, which is the third initiative, which I mentioned earlier, and they were composed of all the major food industry players. 100% PF. They're entirely behind that product ecological footprint. And for us, that seems to be the initiative which concretely has the least chance of being adopted. Not because they're 100% PEF, but just because they're not at all. They don't have the support from civil society. 3 weeks ago, I believe it was, we had a meeting with the European Parliament behind closed doors with big companies, members of the European Parliament and NGOs, unions of consumer unions and environmental charities. It's very clear now from civil society that PEF no is not possible. We mentioned we responded to their invitation yesterday, but we made it very clear that a harmonised framework is a good idea on the condition that it's pertinent, and that means it's absolutely out of the question that it could be based on PEF. And then from the second question, I'm going to be very, very concise, promise. So you can question the value of trying to rate the whole system of production by rating the products. But I mean, there are choices that need to be made. You know, for example, water pollution, climate. We need to be transparent about what points we're taking into consideration. And how do we quantify those targets? As long as we're transparent and clear, if we're capable of being transparent with companies and with consumers on how and why we make these choices, and that's what we do on our website. Biodiversity, it's not good because you're using this product. For example, if we can get that far already, we're talking about forms of production. So I think that's really useful to have that degree of detail.
Yes. I'm sorry.
No, someone else.
Just one thing. Les consommateurs, dans les études conso qu'on a.
One thing, in the consumer studies we've done, we did 3 in the past year. What consumers want to see in their environmental labels is the intensity of pesticide use and the farming methods, particularly for concentration of livestock. What they're saying. That's not for us to say that. You know, we've done representative studies across the French population. We're going to reproduce that study in Germany next. But also Carrefour published that, the major retailer. I didn't have time to get to that slide in my presentation, but Carrefour have an official press release saying their eco score, which they put it on for 6 months for 3,000 of their clients, they got absolutely zero impact on their sales. So, I mean, nothing was happening apparently. Consumers weren't interested in it. But if you really want an agroecological transition, we want to make a success, and if our public policymakers want to make it, well, we've been contacted by Carrefour asking to try the PLANÈTE score. And we weren't even launched. We were just before we'd even launched. They were aware of the concept already, even if it wasn't officially launched. So consumers are out there. They want it, but we need to be more transparent. We're not be afraid of that. Sabine, one final mention, a few final words from Jürn, and then it's coffee time.
Sabine, when we met the first time, I was quite impressed by one statement from you, because you said, well, I'm putting all my energy in this PLANÈTE score and in this food labeling. But actually, of course, I'm aware of the fact that the system labeling as organic farming is actually the right approach, but we don't have the choice. We don't have the choice in France. And I think that's coming back to Nick. I think this is a question, whether there is a choice or not. And I think we also have then to take into consideration that the data situation is different from country to country. But indeed, I mean, this is a very critical issue that needs to be discussed in the organic movement.
Thank you.
One thing, the worst we could do is to say we don't want that labeling for organic. En France, on a eu des propositions pour, voilà, stratégiques en disant...
strategic propositions saying, okay, we'll just have we'll have a little bonus for bio-organic if you want, but we won't take that level. Or we'll ask for, the states will, the government offered us to have an exemption that organic farms wouldn't have to have the eco score or the PF, so all other products would have this environmental, with loads of green ticks all over the place. That's going to create even more confusion. So that would be the absolute worst case scenario. We need to accept to be comparison. We need to play the game of cross-cutting global comparison.
Final word. Sorry for this.
Je suis tous les jours en face du consommateur et c'est pour ça que mon introduction était un peu longue. On est vraiment dans le bio depuis longtemps, mais malheureusement, le bio tout seul ne suffit plus. Les gens demandent autre chose et ils demandent qu'on protège le climat, qu'on garde la biodiversité. Et je suis la première à dire qu'il n'y a pas de place sur l'étiquette, mais il faut rajouter ces informations importantes et donc je continue à plaider pour le PLANÈTE score.
Voilà, merci beaucoup. C'est une super note sur laquelle finir. Thank you to our incredible speakers. Thanks to you for the participation, to the interpreters. We go to a coffee break now that you very well deserved at this point. And after that, there will be a session on the organic regulation. And last but not least, did you all come by train or by car, or is anyone coming by plane? Est-ce que vous êtes mis en train, non, monsieur?
Car, but I'm just nearby. I'm a local.
Everyone not plane? Train. Great. Very environmental. So you all get big bottles of Armagnac. Organic Armagnac, of course. Thank you to all.